From the mountains to the fields, changes are storming across Indie Ball. We're breaking it down in this week's episode of the Indie Ball Report podcast. We're back, episode number 346 of the Indie Ball Report podcast, a show that is CIA free for the time being.
I don't know about that.
Are you a part of the CIA?
No, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, we should probably keep an eye on this idiot. He seems likely to have some sort of construction project going on with a heavy machinery vehicle.
And he has a history of being hostile towards municipal government employees.
Stop talking about yourself in third person. It's embarrassing.
You know, at least I'm not schlepping away for corporate overlords.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about it.
I mean, in a sense, if you got hired by the Lancaster Stormers, you would also be working for corporate overlords now, I suppose.
Are we right into it?
I guess we'll go right into
let's talk about this.
Yes, so news of the day. Thank God for it. Otherwise, we'd be rehashing talking points about Rocky Mountain for about 45 minutes. But instead, we'll talk. Billy, you're spared another week of attendance.
Got away again. You better thank the new Lancaster owners.
You will not have to go to the Z-Quill tonight. But instead, we will talk Stormers baseball because they now have a new ownership group. The Prospector Baseball Group, ran by John Abamodi and Ben Boyer, have purchased the team. They acquired from the original ownership group, including Bob and Steve Zuckerman, Ian Ruzow, and Rob Liss. From general first impressions, this does seem to be, I want to call it Diamond Baseball adjacent, of a couple guys from the financial sphere coming in and purchasing a baseball team. Not inherently something that is a negative, but it's always the kind of thing that makes you extremely guarded. I think that much is safe to say. I am a little concerned that I saw multiple teams going, welcome to the league ownership group. Definitely feels a little, concerning. We'll go with that word. That's kind of where we stand right now. I believe Mr. Crusade on Diamond Baseball Holdings probably has a bit more to say on the matter, so we'll go to the man in black across the way.
I just literally had to take my long sleeve off because I'm sweating. I've been thinking about this nonstop since it was announced.
Yep, and gentlemen, I know there's no ladies listening. He just rolled up his sleeves.
I'm just I think we can agree something feels off here.
Yeah.
And I know that I tend to be a little conspiratorial. I tend to be distrustful of things. Okay. There's the number of reasons we're going to get into. We'll start breaking this down a little bit more. But there were a few things that I found that felt off. One is, this is sort of a new thing for the Atlantic League to have, financiers getting involved. And to be honest, I mean, John Abamondi, he's more or less from the sports management side. It's Ben Boyer, who's the finance guy in this, formerly ran Tenaya Capital. That was part of Lehman Brothers, famously ended well. Okay. So what was it that set me off in the concern department? I guess it's just one, it's that it's a newly founded group. That feels weird. Now I guess, everything's a newly founded group. At some point there has to be the first team. The Stormers are their first team. It's weird. The fact that we're talking about, they want to own about 15 teams. I don't know what that means. It seems like it's okay. I don't even know where to begin on this. Okay. I guess let's start here. I'm sorry. We'll start with looking at the press release. There aren't huge red flags other than the weirdness of, okay, some finance people want to get involved in running an Atlantic League team. Weird. Sure, though, that's not technically a bad thing. Technically, we just saw it be very successful in Oakland out in the Pioneer. So maybe it's fine. The Atlantic League could use, stable ownership. However, Lancaster wasn't really the team that struck me as needing it.
Yeah. I would also
sure.
say, just to interject quickly, I think there's a little bit of a difference between talking about Oakland and talking about this. When I think of Oakland, I think of just two guys that really, wanted a team. And while we are a little distrusting of their background and the situation there, it's also a wee bit different when you're buying a team from scratch, building it up into that kind of a marketplace versus buying a pre-existing team that has about a 20-year-long history and here's, going into it.
And here's the thing, and here's where we're going to start to roll, which is automatic red flag. And those of you who have been here before, you've heard me say before, it is a concern when it is a balance item. When it's something on the balance sheet, at the end of your spreadsheet, profit and loss, nothing changes. Everyone says it's going to run like it always does. But the moment you start not turning the profit that people think you're going to turn, that can be a risk. This is what gets me. There is nothing, and Diamond Baseball Holdings, even when they take a team, they talk about how we love the community, we love this and that. There really wasn't any of it. They're basically like, hey, yeah, we want to own a bunch of teams. This is what we want to do now, and we're doing it. Like basically straight up, like this is our next, like this isn't a passion project. This is an investment project. Okay, weird. Beyond that, it's the fact that where are these teams going to come from, right? And that was the next thing that got us, because it seems like, looking into this, they seem to have some sort of, I don't think it's a platform. I don't know what it is. They seem to have some sort of system. I can't really put my finger on it exactly what this is, but it seems like they're kind of working to streamline and vertically integrate a bunch of different companies, and vertically, and I guess also kind of to spread it wider and get a better integration from that. But like, so basically streamlining as much stuff as possible and figuring you can do it through a bunch of different, it seems like they saw what Diamond Baseball Holdings is doing essentially and been like, hey, we can replicate that. I don't know how they're going to do it in indie ball, because the bulk of the money Diamond Baseball Holdings is guaranteed is because they have the deals with MLB, which we'll get into those conspiracies maybe another time. But it just is unclear to me how they're going to make this a financial thing. I mean, I've seen the theory around that they are trying to get a bunch of teams so they can like test out this like platform or something involving like running minor league teams. But that seems like a lot to do just to prove that theory. So I don't know. That's unclear to me what the hell that is. But what is clear to me is this, is it feels very thrown together. If you look at their website, it is, and I'll give you the entire rundown of the website right here. It won't be lengthy, don't worry. Top left corner, you have the Prospector Baseball Group logo. Looks like it was made in Canva. I will point out now, Prospectors famously going somewhere else to get rich quick and leave. On the right corner is a button that says Contact Us that takes it to get in touch, whether you're a team owner, investor, or just curious about what we're building. Let's talk. We'd love to hear from you. And then there's no way to contact them. And then the middle, in the middle, you got another logo. You have the headline, Modernizing America's Baseball America's Pastime, Building the Next Generation of Community-Driven Baseball Franchises. Okay. Another Connect With Us button leading back to the thing that doesn't let you connect with them. There's an About Us section, which is 3 paragraphs, though technically it's just 3 sentences. That's not how you work a paragraph. That is 100% AI generated, according to the very reliable AI tester that I've been using. And next to it is a stock photo of a baseball field, which I've seen on someone else's blog. The next section now is Technology Advantage. It's 2 paragraphs. Once again, it's actually just 2 sentences. Another stock photo of a baseball player. And that is not AI generated, though it is talking about AI. It says, from AI-powered marketing and dynamic ticketing to centralized finance and predictive stadium ops, we're building a data-driven system that scales performance across clubs. By streamlining operations and unlocking new revenue channels, our platform delivers measurable margin expansion and modern fan experience rooted in authenticity, not algorithms. Sounds pretty algorithmic, bud. And that's also the most corporate slop I've seen in a long time. So, okay. I will, by the way, give you the About Us. Prospector Baseball Group is creating the most advanced and community-connected minor league baseball platform in the country. So it's some sort of platform they're working on. We combine deep operational expertise, long-term ownership, and cutting-edge technology to improve team performance, enhance the fan experience, and drive lasting value. Our model unifies locally cherished clubs under one efficient, modern system, elevating every element of the game without compromising what makes it beloved. Then you got your bios. You got John Abamonte, who's the former CEO of the Brooklyn Nets and the Barclays Center. He's also worked in Madison Square Garden, NBA, and St. Louis Cardinals, the NBA, famously well run. And then Ben Boyer, who is the one that really makes me wonder. Oh, by the way, John Abamonte, married to a former Bachelor contestant. Ben Boyer. Yeah, what it describes him as a serial entrepreneur, which I cannot even begin to tell you how not complimentary that is. I start many businesses. How many have I heard of? A handful, maybe. That's not great. An investor who has helped scale multiple platforms across real estate, transportation, live events, and now sports. Great, we're just the next stop. He co-founded R0, Smart Buildings, Honor Pet, Pet Death Care. Okay, so we are monetizing the death of pets. That's great to see off the bat.
I
and
mean, that's
Tenaya Capital, where he backed breakout tech companies like Queenar, Lyft, Eventbrite, and PlanGrid, which for how many companies Tenaya Capital have invested in over the years. They were originally part of Lehman Brothers. I would say 4 companies to name is not great. Ben has led over a dozen transactions, okay, and is now applying his playbook to modernize MILB. He brings product vision, executional rigor, and deep experience integrated technology into legacy operations. My last point is this. We keep calling it minor league baseball. They keep calling it minor league baseball. Is it because they don't know, they don't care, or because they intend for it to be minor league?
I think it's because they're just looping it all in one grouping to try and cast a wider net.
Okay, I'm done. Sorry. All these reasons, I go, those are all bad things. I don't love this. It could be nothing, but even in that point, it's just not very carefully handled. And you would think that this would be carefully handled because it's a big deal. It's your first brand launch, or it's your first procurement, I guess I'll say. It raises red flags to me.
I hear that.
Fairly well versed in these sorts of things.
Well, while I hear that, I would take the flip swing of you bring in at least one person that has an experience with extremely large corporations in the sports field, which does give you an opportunity to scale up not just the team, but the league as a whole. To what degree that is, I don't quite know. It could be a matter of they're trying to look at other possible revenue streams and other ways to try and modernize the league. I would say if you want to look across, the core 4 real leagues, Atlantic's probably one of the less modern ones, I would say, a little more traditional. And if we're really going to use the only league that's comparable to them in the American Association, they, while not always doing something right, are always trying to do something. They're always trying to work something. And for as much as we like to, poke fun of them for like, hey, look, they got a new chalk sponsor for fields. They are making a lot of partnerships, even if it's not with groups that they still are partnering with them. They're getting more brand recognition out there. They're getting more connections into the corporate space, into potential sponsorships. They are trying to get more revenue streams in because, they're not idiots. They see like, hey, look, attendance is going downwards, which is kind of our main thing when it comes to revenue, is getting people into the ballpark to spend their money here. So we need to try to find ways to supplement that outside and then adapt to the reality of, okay, we're going to have to figure out how to make this work on 2,300 people a night. So if you're going to compare those two, which again, they're really the only two you can go head to head on at the moment, I see the angle from in which you could say, all right, we're going to get more guys familiar with corporate structuring in here to try and work that angle, especially as you have guys that would have done that in the past either start to age out or have more on their plate to handle to where that can't be their thing. Now, again, I do think that's an overly optimistic look at this. I think it's more a matter of a group of two people that said, hey, this thing kind of works for Diamond Baseball Holdings. Why don't we do something similar to that on some undervalued markets and try to moneyball the Diamond Baseball Holdings strategy on this of these teams right now are not currently valued at a lot, but they have good ballparks in markets that have shown success before. We'll go in, not really touch stuff for the first like 18 months or so while we get a figuring on the land here and come with a business strategy on how to maximize the profitability of this. And then we'll start to make the changes we need to get to that point. And I think in some cases it's going to be largely leave it alone. But in other cases it's going to be how do we get from independent ball or college ball into affiliated ball, because that's where we can make our most money. And in some cases, I think it's going to be somewhere in between of just like, hey, we're going to private equity this thing and try to strip value out of it and go as cheap as we can while still trying to maintain that whatever profitable number of people in there. And I think that goes to that predictive analytic part that they mentioned on that website, where it's they're going to judge based off of everything in the portfolio and similar teams. All right, so this is the number we need to hit for profitability. If it goes up, then this is what we're looking at for our strategy. If it goes down, this is what we're looking at. And they're going to use that projected method to either sell it to a team or league as a whole, or use that to fuel further acquisition. That's kind of where my mindset's at. There is a deep recess of my mind that's conspiratorial that I mentioned to you off pod, but I'll now mention on pod, which is I do wonder if we're reaching the point where you see guys like Frank Bolton, who this is their thing that they started back in the late 90s, that are now saying, hey, I'm getting up there in age a little bit. This is a lot to do. I kind of want to back off and start to have an exit strategy. If you have, in theory, a group that wants to acquire 15 teams and you have other teams that Frank's heavily involved in tweeting this out, it kind of makes you think, is this the exit plan? Is this the, hey, I'm going to share all my shares in this league and these teams to you, and that's a quick way to boost that portfolio from one or two teams up to, say, 7 or 8 teams, and now you have a controlling stake in a couple of them. And let's not sit here and pretend like those markets and those stadiums wouldn't be attractive to either affiliated minor league ball or other possibilities.
John Abamondi definitely runs in the same circles as the Diamond Baseball Holdings guys. I don't think they're working together, but it's worth noting.
But they're familiar with each other. If you said the names of them, they'd know.
I mean, maybe. I don't know how close it is. I know that Abamondi seems to have at least connections and has worked with Yes Network before, which ain't nothing. And Peter Freund has pretty famously been within the Yankees organization, got close with Manfred, and then that's how he ended up in the position he ended up in for Diamond Baseball Holdings.
The Yes and the Yankee part there does make me wonder if there's a connection to Staten Island in some manner. That was there in the beginning. I'm not sure if it's still there, but it was there in the beginning.
Yeah.
And with that contract renewal being suspect, I do wonder if that trends one way or the other.
Yeah.
Because Cadam Diaz isn't a spring chicken either.
Yeah.
So if you see an enterprise where you're losing money in and you may be kicked out of the top league, or not kicked out, but it just makes no sense to remain there from a profitability standpoint, and you're going to have to drop down to a league that, let's be real, is going to kick the shit out of you come travel time because you're going to be moving around a lot. Even if they toss you in the Boulder Jackal Minor Down East division. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, do I want to pay a lot in travel? Yeah, my salaries go down. That's a big thing here. But, you know, you start having to make business decisions. I could see it as another easy one, and you have your foot already in the door for that league.
Yeah, I think also, I don't know, just it's hard to see conspiratorial, and something definitely feels so off. And I think if anybody returns to me with, okay, then what seems off? It's fair. I will ask for a little bit of wiggle room when it's. I mean, Nick, you and I live in it. We see this all the time, like ownership change, all that.
Yeah.
Something feels weird here, and I just can't necessarily. It's little things that in themselves aren't anything, but feels like they add up to something, and I can't tell what the bigger
bit of that
is.
And it's a bit of knowing of how these larger team conglomerates normally go, and they're not all bad. I should point that out too, because we use DVH as like the Death Star type example here.
There are also, within Indie Ball multiple, yeah,
like Zoyer is not bad. They have a bunch of different teams in a bunch of different sports, and they all are generally well ran, or at the very least, there doesn't seem to be some kind of sinister intent. Just a group that's like, hey, we like sports and we like money, so we're going to try to make money doing both of that. Which inherently, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just when you're basically strip mining teams, that's when the problem becomes.
Right. And that's where it becomes, and let's look, I mean, the reason things like groups like Zoyer seem to be good, they're very intentional about their expansion. They go into markets they understand. They go, and you can almost tell because they'll get, it's so funny. A lot of it does come back to, I tend to feel there's a little bit more trust sometimes with an organization where it's one of those ones where they have like an ECHL team, an indie ball, because it is actually a little harder to sort of integrate all of them.
Yeah.
So it is more about like, I know that we can run this business well and make it successful, not just like we can take this thing and make it run cheaper so that we can take the profit. I think there's that. And you rarely see a new company like this get off the ground and day one, they're saying something like this. We could own as many as 15 teams, both independent and affiliated, which is what they're saying. He added that owning multiple teams is the way to cut costs and reduce inefficiencies. And I think it's rare. The only exception, again, I think of is Diamond Baseball Holdings, who basically were like, we're here and we own these teams now. Boom. And then they just kept rolling from there. It is also that I think is part of it. When it is, I think 15 teams, up to 15 teams would be okay. So this is when it says we want to run 15 teams and that owning multiple teams is a way to cut costs and reduce inefficiencies. They still haven't, in my mind, said anything that isn't we're in it for profit. And we've talked about it in the past of a lot of the times it's not what is good. Like we kind of need some dudes who are willing to eat it a little bit.
I think part of what this is too is it's a very sterile way of doing this. It's a very just clear cut, like this is what it's about. And it strips away the entirety of you do know, like this is an entertainment industry. It's supposed to be like a love of the game portion of this. And to have it be so cold, calculating and spreadsheet based really kind of strips away it. This is an industry where, for better or worse, from an efficiency standpoint, the human element needs to remain in it. And once you start taking that out, the feeling and the authenticity of it starts to go away quickly. In a way, and there's going to be a lot of people listening that are going to love and hate the next sentence that comes out of my mouth. Mm-hmm. It's almost comparable to the anti-analytic argument of you're just like reducing the game down to numbers as opposed to players. And there's arguments against that. But in the same light, I see that vein of thinking where you're reducing the business of baseball down to just numbers on a spreadsheet. And you could argue it's always been numbers on a spreadsheet, just you had more characters involved and they had shittier tools at their disposal. But before, it didn't feel like a business. It felt like the kind of thing some people do for profit, while now it feels like this is the thing that needs to make a profit versus the thing that we hope makes a profit because I need to pay my mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just think it's a death of authenticity. that is what makes it a little suspect, because you did mention we do see a lot of ownership changeover in this. Sometimes you see just one guy buying a team, and it's like, okay, well, what's the deal with the one guy? We've seen sports groups buy teams before, and what's the deal with that? And then sometimes you have partnerships and whatnot that go through with it. Sometimes you just see someone else getting a controlling interest, and things change quickly and whatnot. I mean, hell, how many times since I've been doing this show over the last 7 years or so has Cleveland been sold to a different group? Probably 3 or 4, if I'm being honest, and that's just me quickly thinking off the top of my head. So changeover, even within one org, is not like a crazy thing or an alarm bell thing per se. It's not really a sign of a healthy org, but it's not crazy or unheard of either. It's just when you have groups that seem to be in existence for the sole purpose of turning a profit at any expense, that starts to be concerning. And those groups, while not always obvious, normally have a couple signs that you see. And it's normally small things in the way they go about it that if you're not used to dealing with this, you're not going to notice. But when you're used to dealing with it, you start to go, oh, that's what they always say.
I don't know how to sum this all up other than I'm concerned for sure. I guess here's my bigger thing, right? We have talked nonstop on this podcast seemingly about how no one's turning a profit in any ball right now, and it's kind of a problem, and nobody's solid. If this were simply a good revenue source comes in and grabs a dozen indie ball teams and solidifies them, I could get on board. However, I don't know that that's possible in indie ball because we've talked about how hard it is to turn a profit routinely. Now, again, Hagerstown's doing it reportedly. And if that's the case, that's pretty impressive because it's a 2-year turnaround on that. However, I worry about people getting into indie ball to make money because if they don't, and it's harder than they think, which these guys seem to know their way around some books, but time and time again, owners seem to be getting involved in indie ball and thinking they can turn a profit and realizing, this isn't what I thought it is, and getting burned. I'm afraid of how they'll leave the team. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's the other part of this too. So I will say to your point on the analytics comparison, because you're not wrong. I think there's a real parallel there, which is the reason the analytics teams really, they're all analytics teams now if you're looking at Major League Baseball. So let's stop pretending. But the teams who are all in, we are just analytics, never really succeeded in a way at the end of the season is because that's based on scale, right? It's based on the idea of, and where analytics crumbles as an analytics person is because it's based on scale. It's based on 162 games. If you do this every time, you will more often than not come out ahead. Sometimes you'll just get burned.
The Kike quandary, if you would.
Right. It doesn't take into account a few things like in a single game moment. Sometimes you have to go outside the analytics and go on feel and the rhythm of the game and what's happening in front of you. Additionally, it doesn't take into account sometimes if you're saying, hey, I go back to there's some guys that we've seen who are told, hey, you got to get the ball in the air. And it's, there's so many wasted at bats and pop-ups. Like it kind of wears on that batter and it changes their approach and it messes things up. Additionally, like the Phillies had an issue a few years back where they were telling all their pitchers to throw elevated fastballs because that was the wisdom of the time. And they didn't have elevated fastball guys. And we sacrificed a whole generation of pitchers in the Phillies development system to this because they just got murked. And in the same way, I worry about anybody who's going to try to spreadsheet out the business of baseball because, and I've said this before as somebody who has worked in the community relations side and the marketing side and studies it because I love it and I hate myself apparently. There is an inefficiency. These are community businesses. And in community businesses, there is an inefficiency required for success. And that breaks models because it's what you can scale things to make hot dogs cheaper and to make staffing more efficient and all these things. But you need to also be inefficient with the way you give out tickets to little leagues and to charities. You need to be inefficient with the way that those, when you strip that staff down, they talk about using AI to, figure out baseball operations stuff or stadium operations, not baseball operations, stadium operations. And we kind of talk about what that might mean off pod. If that is how you're doing your staffing, for example, okay, we can get away with this much staffing for the night. You need to keep in mind that minimum staffing means minimum service. And when it comes down to it, if you're giving minimum service, if people aren't feeling at home, people aren't feeling like they're getting more than they purchased, people aren't feeling like this was a good value and they felt welcomed and happy there. And if, especially in Lancaster, which is the added thing here, because people in Lancaster love going to Lancaster games. They love it. It's a really well-run operation. If they don't feel that, they might back away. Like, they might be like, I'm good. I don't need all that. I got places that want my very limited money. I don't need to be here. And you'll lose them. And maybe you won't lose season ticket holders right away, but you'll lose the people who go to 5 games a year, and that adds up quickly. And that's where it gets into trouble in the same way. Is the analytic and AI approach can work great for big picture, but when it's the small details, man, it's not going to, they cannot translate. It doesn't work well. So I'm interested to see how that applies. I'm not saying they're going to fail. I'm saying that they're going to need to adapt to that, and we'll see. And as somebody who, Abamondi has some big things on his resume, the Nets, MLB, he also had some weird positions with MLB, by the way, which I'll mention in a second. But the big picture, I don't know if he's ever operated in such, or how long it's been since he's operated in such a smaller scale thing. And I don't know if he understands what that means. He says it sounds like they're going to leave the same people running the show in Lancaster, but I will warn you. I mean, I always go back to the conversation I had with the people in Altoona when they said, hey, Dime Baseball Williams just let me run things like I run things. And I said, well, what happens if you miss your numbers? Like, well, then, they're going to have something to say about it and they might make some changes. It's like, oh, okay. So you're not free to operate how you've been operating. You're free to operate how you've been operating as long as you hit the number. Yeah. And if you don't, they're going to bring in their own guy. I will point out too, that Abamondi did work with Major League Baseball for a few years with Bud Selig. He was a senior director of labor economics, famously good labor relations in that time. He was also with the Cardinals as assistant GM, which is interesting. San Diego Padres as VP of strategy and business analysis. I don't know the years on that. That's kind of interesting. Because depending on the time that you were in San Diego doing strategy and business analysis, that could be quite the compliment or quite the condemnation. Yeah.
Before you go too far down the rabbit hole, I do want to build on the community.
I'm in it, baby.
The community business angle of it, which is part of what those analytics don't take into account. You've given the example of this is what we can charge for a hot dog, and this is what the service is. Mm-hmm. You never account for the bad press that comes from, they laid off my uncle who'd been working as an usher there for the past 5 years and then raised the hot dog $1.50. Mm-hmm. You can't factor in how much that's going to hit in each marketplace. And that's going to affect every other analytic number. Mm-hmm. Because it goes down to, it's not so much that you cut the staff and it took an extra 2 minutes for me to get the hot dog and soda and get back to my seat. It's that you cut the wrong individual. You cut the guy that everyone that's been coming there for the past, half decade knows and has probably talked to at some point, has a good relationship with, and more than that, has seen how this ballpark runs and kind of has a feel for okay, this is when there's going to be a problem. This is the kind of night where there's normally issues. This is the easiest way to diffuse a thing. You lose that kind of experience with it. And moreover, if you're going to assume that for a lot of these summer jobs, I'm not even talking the interns, I'm just talking the seasonal employees, that's basically a summer jobs program at that point. You start cutting away at that, people look at that differently. it's a lot easier to be engaged in a community asset like a team when you know, like, oh yeah, my neighbor's kid worked there last summer, or you have some sort of personal connection to it. And predictive staffing may save you whatever you're paying them. I don't know what the state minimum wage is in Pennsylvania, but I can't imagine it's A, that high, and B, more than what these kids are getting paid to be ushers or concession workers. Let's just call it, for the sake of argument, $13 an hour. Sure, over the course of like a 6-hour long time frame that you're going to need them for, you're going to save the roughly $80 you're paying them. But did you lose more than $80 in ticket concession and merchandise sale from the people coming through that would have otherwise had a connection with someone that worked there and thus with the team? It's things like that that come to mind.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking too. I got one thing for the pod and one thing for just, I don't have an end to this thought, but I'm bringing your attention to it.
Okay.
Abamondi, his LinkedIn says that he's been with this with Prospector for 10 months, which means I would not be surprised if they already have deals in place for other teams.
Kind of conspiracy theory on this, and I guess this will be one of the last things I say because I don't really have all too much else to really go on here, is I do almost wonder if this, Prospector baseball group isn't really their end game here, that this is their stepping stone to something else. That you start trying to figure out how to make this kind of a thing work, whatever their end concept is, work. And instead of doing it with, MILB teams, where you may get more fight back and pushback on it, you do it on the indie ball level, where realistically there's no major oversight. And if you screw them over, probably you're not going to get the same backlash, or at least it's not going to have the same sauce to stick. I do wonder, to a degree, if this is just like the sandbox they test their ideas in, and wherever they burn down, who really cares in the end, type of thing.
True. I guess if we're on the pod now, while we were sort of in a sidebar, I found Long Ball Capital, which is something, Long Ball Insurance Services is kind of labeled as both things. It run by John Abamondi, president and CEO. And it seems to be like an insurance company for like hedging against underperformance of athletes. Like an insurance, like you can basically get an insurance policy that will, financially help back you, I guess, for losses from underperformance of an athlete you gave a guarantee contract to, which is interesting. I don't really know what to make of that. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing in itself. It's just sort of interesting.
It's almost like those first bet guarantees you get when you first sign on to a gambling app. We're just like, if your first bet misses, we'll go ahead and give you whatever you lost in site credit.
I don't know. In summary, I don't know. I'm cautious. I've reached out to them to come on the pod. We'll see. I'm concerned. I'm not saying this is doomed. I'm not saying this is going to be a bad thing. And I'm aware that I tend to be the negative person. I'm aware that I tend to be worried about it, but let's be honest here. There's been a lot of concerning things happening. So my bad. But what are we supposed to take from this? At the very least, it's a local long-time ownership handing off to an outside investment group.
I guess report back when it makes sense.
Yeah, well said. I don't know. I hope this isn't the start. That's all.
So on that note, we will go to the other cheery story of the week, which is just confirmation of what we've discussed for quite some time now in the Rocky Mountain Vibes, ceasing operations, leaving Colorado Springs without pro baseball. And see, the difficult part about this is not even so much the general dysfunction behind whatever the Pioneer League is currently. And we'll get into more of the minutia of that conversation again in just a second here. What's difficult for me is keeping straight what we discussed off pod and on pod, because we've talked about this since early September, that like they're done. And like we've kind of had an inkling before that, going into August even. I don't recall it being early. I don't think in July we had that feeling, but we were like, this is expensive to operate. This could be a problem. And let's not kid ourselves. Like, this team has never been on great financial footing. I mean, hell, they had a development partnership deal with a Mexican league team for the first 2 or 3 years of independence before they broke off of that. Looked really solid for a year, and then kind of were like, very mid after that, and then became what they were. So, like, that aside, my bigger thing is just like, what have we said on, what have we said off, and what we need to rehash here? Because I don't want to just say the same talking points again and again and again, but I do want to make sure we cover everything at the same point here. It's just, the main thing here is this is not very surprising. In fact, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, we kept having people DMing us like, Rocky Mountain seems like they're done. And we literally discussed off pod how everyone keeps saying this, but we've said this already, right? Like, we've announced this before. They're going to leave, and the reason they cited here, at least ownership cited, was, all the other Colorado teams are gone now, so it's not feasible for us to travel, which, I mean, like, you only had 2 teams nearby, and then whatever was in Utah, too, and outside of that, everything's a long trip here. So, like, yeah, it sucks. He lost 2 close travel partners, which probably make up in about 100-game season. What would you say? Made up about 30 games or so?
Quick math. Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah, about third of their year.
So, I mean, like, admittedly, that is a large chunk that's now going to get added on to travel because it's be distributed out more. But, like, let's not sit here and pretend like that's the only reason. The reason was it costs a lot to insure it. It costs a lot to pay them. And it costs still a decent amount in travel. And there wasn't much of a return.
Yes, I'm glad you said it, because the article about it was like, what was the quote? It got me laughing because it was kind of inevitable considering with all these recent changes in the Pioneer League, said longtime team historian Chris Moyer, referring to recent closures of teams based in Grand Junction and Windsor. I'm like, brother, I don't think that's what he's referring to, whether he knows it or not. I think the changes are the complaints from a lot of ownership in the Pioneer League are it's damn expensive, and the travel is brutal and expensive. And what have they done to alleviate this? They went to California, which made the travel worse, and that made it more expensive to sign players because the California guys have to get paid more. Yeah. Like, these guys, the ownership was already drowning. And that's why my pet theory on this is I'm beginning to think the Pioneer League wants to be a California league. And you know, you can come with, but you're going to be the team on the island if you want to stay in Montana or wherever the hell you are, or you got to start finding another league.
And see, this kind of goes back to the thing, because I go ahead and I have internal monologues throughout my day just because, you know, that's what I do. And I was thinking about this conversation beforehand. And like what I was thinking about was, like, the Pioneer League, I'm equally as concerned and unconcerned about it, right? Because, like, the brand that is the Pioneer League, I assume that's going to just kind of survive in some form or another. And the individual teams I'm not overly concerned about. I'm more concerned about its current construction and staying like that, right? Because the clear cut is, like you said, going to California, going west. You're going to go ahead, you're going to have Modesto, you're going to have Oakland, you're going to have Yuba for at least the time being, you're going to have Long Beach. And realistically, if things got that desperate, those guys could split off. They'd be fine. They could probably take Boise with them. They could probably take Idaho Falls with them. And the inevitable expansion that will come somewhere else in the Pacific Northwest, whether that's Oregon or Washington, eventually something's going to go there. It just feels inevitable as the travel stop there to make it so that way you can reasonably say, we don't have to fly there anymore. Even though if you're going to Long Beach, you're still going to have to fly there.
Bro, Long Beach to Kalispell's a 4.5-hour flight.
Yeah.
So what are we doing?
There's no way on God's green, even going Oakland to Long Beach, it's still going to be like a 90-minute flight probably. And it's like a 4-hour drive. Yeah, it's not feasible to do that. Unless you're going down there for 12 games at a clip, it's not going to make financial sense to do it. And if you're playing the same damn team 12 days in a row, A, it's going to sell like shit. And B, from a competitive standpoint, that is horrific. It's like, it's going to be Cleburne on steroids is what's going to be. And so just to continue on the train of thought I have, I'm going to drop off in a second here, but like That's the reality for like half of them. And the other half, like if they stick around, they may be able to do their own league thing. But realistically, their future's probably going to be summer college ball if this thing collapses, because from a financial standpoint, that is what makes sense here. Because the financial reality of the Pioneer League as it's currently constructed, and this is a thing I thought about a little bit throughout the day, is they pay on a level which is magnitudes closer to the Atlantic League than the talent level they have now. Even if it's not one for one, it's close to that because of the state minimum wage thing. But their
ability to fill those ballparks, by the way. But continue.
Exactly. And so you're close to that, but you're not getting the talent there because it's kind of a dead end league at the moment here.
And with your roster restrictions, you can't bring in that talent.
So even if you were to rip them away, some guys may go there that are like, look, I'm 29, I'm a position player. This is the end of the road for me. I got 1-2 more seasons left in me before it's time to get that real estate license. So I'm going to try to make what money I can now and try to set myself up for something else or get ready to go coaching. So like, I'm going to pick a market that's going to enable me to do that. So let me go get some money here real quick and say, hey, if I'm going to be traveling on a bus for 12 hours on any given random Wednesday, I might as well be going through the Rocky Mountains as opposed to going through like the fields of Iowa, right? So those guys there, they can't go there because of roster restrictions, but even more so, that's what you'd be going for. The guys that are still like 25, 26 that still have the potential to get signed, get moved on, they look at the Pioneer League and they would say, yeah, the money's comparable, but no one gets signed out of there. And so now you got to make a decision, right? Do I go there for the cash and like travel's going to be shitty, but shitty everywhere, right? But it feels worse there. So do I go there for that? Or do I take staying in like the Atlantic League or the American Association or even the Frontier League that gets more guys signed there? Go for that. It's kind of an all over the place thing because I'm trying to gather the exact thought I had. The way they're naturally set up to be is the complete opposite of the direction they need to go in. So like I can see like the branding of the Pioneer League existing beyond what it currently is. I can see each of the teams existing beyond what it currently is, but I just can't see the branding of the league and the people in the league existing as it currently is going forward. I mean, you lose 3 teams in one off season. Sure, you replace 2 of them, but still, let's not look. You lost 3 teams, and you replaced them with similar expense markets
with flyers, essentially. Like, let's see how this goes. Okay, I will say, and this is going to actually be more of a positive and then questionable take, but I will say, realistically, if you just surface level take, we got rid of we no longer have Windsor, we no longer have Colorado Springs, we no longer have Grand Junction. Thank you. We no longer have them, but we've added Long Beach. We're adding Modesto and third place.
Which from the article, I'm just going to say from the article, it does sound like that franchise is on hiatus for 26.
So they have to add something. And I do have it on some authority that they're at least kicking around a travel team, which talk about no feasibility on that idea. But I assume that can't happen. I don't know what they're going to do, though.
Yeah. Which also love the Indie Ball Insider tentative map, really helping me right now visualize.
Well, I think it's interesting. One, let's talk about this first year, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. Now, because the Western Association did the work for them, they did very little work, but they did the work for the Pioneer League here. You know the interested markets, as evidenced by the fact that they just swiped Long Beach straight up. That should give you the heads up. I wouldn't be surprised if you see like an Orange County team, and it doesn't have to be a permanent team if you're in the Pioneer League standing. You just have to figure it out for a year, maybe get your California pod fleshed out a little more, and then for 1 year, you use a college stadium, whatever. They obviously don't care about attendance. I'll get back to that because YOLO, they punted attendance, and I'm starting to get some indications that Yuba's attendance was greatly exaggerated last year. So we'll talk about that at some point. But let me be positive for a moment. If there is a real chance that when we look at the future of the Pioneer League, it isn't that crazy. Because if you add in maybe another California team, if you give me a team, something in Oregon like in Medford or Bend, maybe, you give maybe a Washington market, all of a sudden that goes from a California pod and then the rest to California, Oregon, Washington, up into Montana, Boise on the western side of Idaho. And then, what are you losing there? Idaho Falls, who we constantly hear is financially questionable, and you lose Ogden, which we know is financially questionable right now. So realistically, that's a feasible league that can succeed if everybody's able to operate. And Billings, by the way, might be going to, who knows? And Great Falls, that's the other one. Okay. Even if that is what happens, even if that's what happens, I'm going to do a swear. Like, you, dude. Like, the thing that we've always said is so great about the Pioneer League and so special about it is the fact that MLB did the selfish thing and they said, we're up out of here. Good luck. And they said, we're not abandoning these communities. We're still going to be a team. We're still going to work on this. Here's what we're doing. And they gave it a damn shot. And they are, and I just saw like 5 Points vids who, good YouTube follow, just did a deep dive into how there's no sports in this area. And I actually didn't even watch the video because I felt like he was going to talk indie ball stuff and it was going to get me going on a different thing. But like, you are the pro sports in this area. And for the Pioneer League to be like, yes, we own that. And then a few years of like starting and stop in trouble, whatever. They're like, well, I guess we're just not then going to California is like unacceptable. I'm supportive of an indie league succeeding, but like, if that's the cost of it, it's going to really frustrate and hurt me. Like, I'm going to be really bothered by this. I
hear that, but it also, I commend them for the attempt, but financial realities do catch up to you.
No,
so
I understand
at a certain point, like, I get it. And I guess push comes to shove, I'd rather have those jobs and opportunities still available, even if they are in different communities, which is easy for me to say when I'm not in the community is getting screwed. But something's better than nothing here. And again, looking at the tentative location map, I think this year's an easy enough solve. If they do want to go the travel team, you could do, in theory, for the sake of travel and keeping expenses relatively tighter, California pod, Montana pod, other, and throw a travel team with the other, which is basically the two Idaho teams, Ogden, and then your travel. Let them play a pod amongst themselves, maybe a little crossover there, just for the sake of spicing it up and competitive balance, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't really matter. Not like they were even schedules anyway out there. Not everybody was playing each other. So fine. You do that for a year while you sort out the rest of the mess. And then you say 27, we got to make sure it's a home run year. And we'll just say we're not punting on 26, but it's third and long.
Now, I agree to an extent as well. However, it does bother me slightly when it's not like they've made it easier on these markets by going to California, which jacks up the cost of operating. And I also think, too, the weirdest one to me is if we look at the struggling organizations, it's like Ogden, we know, is struggling. They have good attendance, and it seems legit. And because I wanted to say, like, I don't feel bad for Colorado Springs or legitimate city, and if they couldn't keep their team afloat, they can't keep their team afloat. But they have the third best attendance in the league. They're pulling 2,300, if that's accurate. But it seems like even if everyone's lying by about the same amount, they're still sticking around at least the top half of this league. Like, I don't know.
I hear that too, but also let's not pretend like Colorado Springs was always at this level and then it suddenly fell off. They lost the AAA team, not fairly, but they lost it all the same. And then it was a steady decline in rookie ball, and then it's been, what it is. So, like, at the same point in time there, it's like if you've been falling off for a decade now, at a certain point, that bill comes due.
No, I get that. And I think it's just there was the problem is and I understand this, my grievance goes back much further than this decision. And because it goes back to the operation of it. And part of that could be not understanding what they signed up for, or not, frankly, Pioneer League runs a skeleton crew of a front office. Like, no one in that office might know what, literally, I've said before, I don't think they know what they're doing. Literally, they might not, because I don't know who is there, who is understanding fully what was supposed to happen there, because the fact that it seemed like they, in the very beginning, they seemed to really do a bold marketing push, which I really liked. I liked where their head was at. The execution was off, but whatever. But I'm like, how much money went into that? Should they have played just super conservative financially and like roughed out a few years, scraped by, and really just did everything to slow build and strengthen the organizations within the fold? Were they even thinking that long term? Because I hear from a lot of owners and GMs out there that they were working under the assumption that they would be back in affiliated ball at some point. Don't know where that would come from, but okay.
I can't think.
I guess from the jump, there didn't feel like there was a plan, and now the only plans left to survive involve burying markets in some cities, and I guess it just sucks. And I get that. I think I agree at this point. You got to cut the limb off, but it's hard to not look back and say this wouldn't have been necessary if better decisions were made. And it's frustrating.
That is fair. And it does go to my point here when you were talking about the California thing. It felt like the kind of thing that at each junction, we were apprehensive about it, but we did say this is probably a good thing. Like Oakland, for example, we're apprehensive about it because of everything going on around it. But if it works, it's going to work well. Like each separate incident there feels like they're a victim of circumstance, almost, where they made the right decision in the moment, but then it just kind of led them to here. And I think it does go back to what you're saying with there really isn't a leadership structure here with the skeleton crew and people not really knowing what to expect and having different expectations here. And I think back to that critical juncture where they first had to go independent in 20 for that 21 season, they were really relying on Major League Baseball kind of telling them what to do. And we're like, oh, well, we'll get payments from MLB. So that's going to really afford us the opportunity to do a lot of things here for a little while. And by the time we don't have them, they'll be fine. And the problem is they never really had people in the league office that had done this before. And MLB, A, also doesn't know how this works. And B, had less than zero desire to figure it out and help them. Because as far as they were concerned we wrote the alimony check. We don't give a shit what happens from here. We'd
already cut this relationship off. Why am I still mentoring you? Yeah.
Bingo. It's a deadbeat dad. You got your child support check. Don't talk to me. That's pretty much what the deal here was. With everything going on here, they really had no one to back on. And it's like, sure, you may be able to talk to one, if not both Joshes, or Tasler over in the Frontier, or maybe Rick over in the Atlantic. But A, how much time do they have for you? And B, how much do they want to help you? I'm not going to say
how weirdly competitive a lot of these leagues are.
Exactly.
Yeah,
there's a lot of them that are like, if they see you drown, they're going to throw you an anchor. So whether good or bad, and some of them are not going to like that I took that approach. But I mean, like, let's be honest, guys, you take your opportunities. I don't disagree entirely, but like rising tide here, we're all in the same we're all in the same situation. But in any case, like, realistically, the best thing they could have done in that moment was saying, all this money we are getting from MLB, we're going to pool a certain percentage and go try to steal someone from one of these other leagues to run our thing, because they know what they're doing and we need that. Or going out and getting a guy that had been doing this for a while that suddenly was no longer the commissioner of one of these leagues, maybe Bill Lee, for example, to bring on as a consultant for a year or two to kind of show guys like, oh yeah, this is how you do this. This is how you do that. I don't know. I'm talking from like an operational standpoint of like, yeah, this is how you handle these different personalities. I'm talking just from like a supply chain side of like, get that part handled, and then this is how you handle the personalities, and actually having a guy that had been in this industry before start to talk to people that were delusional to believe that, yeah, they're going to come back. They just went out for cigarettes. They'll be back. And tell them, no, this is your new reality. This is where you are. Shift the mindset. Whatever mindset you have to be to say, okay, priority 1 needs to be figure out what we need to survive. And priority 2 is get to that number so that way you can hit we're going to exceed that now. But get to the baseline once you know what it is. And it feels like they never really knew what to do with it, even though there were times where they were running parallel to it.
No, you nailed that. I'm still just trying to think. I don't want to keep rehashing it. It's just like, because I know my thing is more pointless, frankly, because I'm sitting here like they should have done things different years ago.
But it also is true that they should have done it. But it's also just a situation where it's like, how does a building collapse? Well, it either happens because something made it collapse, or it's years of doing 1 or 2 things wrong or not doing 1 or 2 things. And all of that neglected maintenance caught up to you.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
The building. And that's more or less what it is. You made the decision you thought was right in the moment, and then it caught up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily mean you made the wrong decision, but it also means you didn't make the decision that produced a long-term result. And that's a lot of times, especially in indie ball as a whole, there's a lot of decisions that are just decisions you had to make. It's not right or wrong. It's just the decision you had available to you.
I want to bring this full circle here. And this is an idea that I'm not sure how I would feel about. I'll say that, first of all. However, if you really want to make a play, if you are new friends at Prospector Baseball Group,
that's something
buy the Pioneer League.
That's something I thought of too.
The league and the teams. That if you want to streamline the thing that's hanging on by a thread, fix it up, and talk about you can get away with doing your evil, equity strategy plans, right? But the fact that you kept the teams alive, you didn't just strip them down, you kept them alive when otherwise they very much wouldn't have in several of these markets, would make you the hero. So you kind of get it. And that way also, I mean, do you deal with conflict of interest of like, oh, but all the different teams and their players? Yeah, maybe, but the Atlantic League has played that game. The MLS plays that game to this day. Technically, you don't sign a contract with the Philadelphia Union. If you're a player in the MLS, you sign a contract with MLS and they put you on the Union. What? So it's not the end of the world if you want to go that route. Just a thought. I would be fascinated. I would actually be quite interested if that was the direction. I have someone who's toyed with starting a league before with another owner who's no longer relevant. Two other owners, one still friend.
It's funny is that you mentioned that, but I was thinking the same thing during our Lancaster conversation. I was like, what if they just buy 15 teams and put them in the same league? Like, it's basically bigger Pecos league at that point, right?
Yeah.
And like, in theory, it could work better. You avoid all the negativity that the Pecos league has been saddled with. I can only assume whoever you're going to put in charge as the commissioner of this league will not have the same, we will call it abrasive personality that Andrew Dunn has been known to have. I mean, I guess. You mean to sit here and tell me there's not guys in these league offices that wouldn't take a paycheck from this kind of a group to go do that kind of job?
Frankly, I mean, I would be interested. I would be interested because I think that sort of thing, while there is a clear and present risk of negative result and concerning outcomes, I think there is a large possibility for things to be done right. And so that's an idea that, despite all my takes on equity and owning multiple organizations, that is one where I think if the number one issue these leagues have is having a unified vision and growth strategy and a good understanding of the need to support all clubs, and that certain clubs will need more support than others, and balancing that and maintaining a standard with broadcasts, with games, with fan experience. that is interesting. But the risk again comes from when it comes to something like an equity firm that's looking for profit. Very rarely is that number one priority. Priority number one is profit. I think, and it will always go back to the crazy pie in the sky ask, which is always, if you want to be a great indie ball owner, you have to not have profit first. You have to be willing to take a loss. And I think in that situation, you'll be surprised how often profit comes with the result.
Two major thoughts on it. One, I do wonder if the wildest idea ever would work, which would be just like walk-in Wednesdays for just like your Wednesday, free attendance. You don't
charge that idea. We talked about it here.
Yep.
We talked about it here.
Yep. I do wonder if just one day a week, like, yeah, just come into the ballpark, middle of the week game. Because you're not going to do like Friday, Saturday, Sunday off the table entirely. Don't even discuss that. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, those days aren't, big sellers. If you could choose it from, say, 1,700 paying to, say, 3,500 non-paying, I wonder what the skew looks like. If there's a risk, obviously, if they walk in, they don't spend what you need them to spend in the ballpark, then it could look really bad on a spreadsheet. But I just refuse to believe that if you're giving people a perceived great value, they're not going to be willing to get gouged to the concession stand or a merchandise tent. I refuse to believe that. So that is one thing. And then the other point I have more to the conversation itself about, basically house league at that point. I wonder if that's not what already Oakland ownership is kind of doing, given their involvement with a lot of the California teams.
I could see it.
It's kind of there. The immediate counter is, well, they got rid of Yuba, which fair, but
I think also Yuba didn't have any. I think they never wanted Yuba.
Yeah.
YOLO. I mean, YOLO was literally an afterthought the whole way. They never had a marketing team. They never had they never had anything. There's nobody at those games. And I'll point to also, I'm big on the Marysville experiment. I think Marysville is an interesting market, and I'm rooting for them. But I mean, we were talking about it before. I mean, I've gotten some info that seems fairly clear that if you look at it, so their reported attendance numbers for the year were exactly 1,000 average, almost exactly 1,000 average, and which is the worst in the league. However, when you look at their first week of attendance reporting, they didn't report. So the first game was a Tuesday, and they didn't report the attendance. Second game, they didn't report the attendance. Third game, they reported as 250 people. The fourth game, they reported as 840 people. And then they didn't report the Friday night on the 26th, which is the Monday after the week. They then reported the first game as having 1,500 people, the second game as having 1,100 people. They updated the 250 figure they gave to 400. They didn't update the 840. They said 600 in the 600s for the weekend games. And then 2 days later on the 28th, they updated all of those attendance figures to between like 24 and 3,500 people. So it sounds like somebody got to them and said, don't say that's your attendance. And then they said that. That's what it appears like for me. Not trying to say nothing about it, but that would point to the larger thing, because I'm not making my point about lying about attendance. That's a different conversation. But it does seem like it might not be going super well in Yuba, especially with a lot of turnover going on over there throughout the year and now after the season. So I would just keep a close eye on the success rate there. Wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Marysville seems pretty invested in it. We'll see if that stays invested after a struggle for the first year, and we'll kind of go from there. But I wouldn't be surprised to see them move along.
See, because I feel like there's a different conversation, the not so positive one that we definitely don't want to have, but may have to have, about viability of markets, which we did last year, where we kind of went through everybody and we're like, yeah, that's not really a long-term option for you. Because I still defend my position on that we're reaching a point here where our best course of action for a lot of these leagues and whatnot is to, instead of expanding, begin to reduce our numbers a little bit. I'll defend the consolidation plan, not because I like having to do it, but because I do think long run, let's get competent owners in running these teams and make sure everything's in a row, because long-term success matters more here.
Right.
And I hate having to say it, because I hate seeing communities lose stuff, but I'd rather see incompetent ownership dealt with than allowed to continue to exist and then potentially burn it all down.
And I'll also, and I'll exactly to that point, I'm going to acknowledge, while I hate to see some of these places lose professional baseball, and while I have said, railed against MLB and Dime Baseball Holdings removing baseball from small towns, countless times, I do think there is a fundamental difference between cutting out these towns for the sake of profit versus cutting out these towns to preserve baseball in a larger number of other small towns, because that would be the Pioneer League situation, essentially. And honestly, many of these leagues, saving baseball up in, Missoula, Kalispell, those areas, and preserving professional baseball there by letting some of these other markets go is a different proposition than, well, we have a more profitable option somewhere else with a better tax break. We're going to bail on you guys. That's different.
Exactly. There's a difference between having to cut off a limb that's gangrenous versus having to cut off a limb that just doesn't work as good as before.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Yeah.
Real positive.
What else? So, it's
the nature of it. You can't control the news. What happens, happens. Right. And what's there to discuss is there to discuss, especially when we get to the off season. We don't really have the luxury of choice. It's more like, what's there is there.
Can a white boy catch a vibe and talk a little ball
for a minute? Why not?
Because we had some transactions, which is refreshing. American Association side, Lake Country brought Connor Bagnieski in. That was actually before our last pod, like the day of. And Connor Bags is, I think, fascinating. If you don't know him, he went to Radford for like a season post-COVID.
That's rad.
Played well. And then I Hate You. And then ended up in the USPBL for like a couple seasons, had a really good year and then didn't have a good year. Did a short stint in like Lake Country and looked good. Went to Tri-City in 2023 and looked not good in a short stint. And then he went to Ogden and has crushed for 2 years, batting like 360-ish with 29 home runs. He went from, and while you can agree, what about, the run environment that you're playing in there? I'll point to this. His home run totals, he had 3 in college in 3 years. He had 1 in the USPBL in like 60 games. He had 0 throughout his Indy career, and then he had 6 home runs in 73 games with Ogden in 2024. Last year, he played 84 games and had 23 home runs. So something has changed with him. I'd have to do a deeper dive to figure out exactly what, if it's a mechanic change, if it's just a strength change. But going from 26 to 27, I'm tempted to think it might be a mechanic change. Mechanical adjustment he might have made. The slugging percentage, again, everything's elevated because it's Ogden, but did go from 500 to 611. Isolated slugging went up by like 120 points. Connor Bagnieski's fascinating. I think he could be a really good pickup, and I think that's huge for Lake Country. And then Cleburne is bringing back Ben Hampton, who's fascinating. 12 innings, short stint in his first year of pro ball, but he looked really good, had a sub 1.5 ERA in those innings. And Dakota Chalmers, who ate 62 innings up and sort of a starter, and then did a couple games of relief. So he's come back to Cleburne too, and I think that's a move.
All right.
We're getting some signings. Woo!
We're getting white bread and water in the form of sightings.
Better than nothing, buddy. Connor Bagnieski is a fascinating signing. I don't know what you're talking about.
You also see that apparently Point Streak may not be doing baseball anymore.
Yeah, dude, what the hell? I'm scrambling. I'm scrambling right now because I have like so many things I'm in the middle of, and I'm like, oh no, like I can't lose access to Point Streak in the middle of this. I'll die.
Ain't that a just statement on the situation? That we're like, if we lose Point Streak, we're screwed. And it's not because Point Streak's good. It's because we've seen what else is out there.
We've seen what else out there, and we've learned to work with Point Streak.
Exactly. We're familiar with it. And the fact is, we've dealt with whatever the Frontier League and Atlantic League has thrown at us before. And I don't want to go back to that, especially the Frontier League site. Shep, if you do that to me, we're going to have a problem.
I have seen a little behind the curtain. I think the Frontier League has something new coming, and I think it has potential. I would expect growing pains, but I would think it's a good long-term solution. The Atlantic League, I know they're working on their own video thing. It sounds like I would be interested to see if they are working on their own staffing, because I've heard rumors they're looking to bounce from Point Streak. The Pioneer League does their own thing, and while some of it is super sloppy, I did actually grow. I like their game logs, which is funny that they have better game logs than the other leagues. And the American seems to have really kind of ironed out their point streak situation, so they have it pretty smooth. I'm interested to see. They tend to do a good job. Obviously, AA Baseball TV is a good product, so I'm interested to see what they would do.
Hey, Ryan, did you know the games are free on there?
Hey, how about it? But I'm just, when it comes to it, I guess leagues take it seriously and understand the importance of access to statistics, because there was that weird period of time there where like the American Association stats weren't on Baseball Reference to start the year. Yeah. And like I heard from multiple people outside Indie Ball, they're like, what the hell is that about? And I had to be like, no, like it's not like they're fine. The league is fine. They're legit. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, what I was told about that. It was some coding issue.
It was,
something.
Yeah, it was, just linking sites to each other, but it's still, I mean, take it seriously. It's so much of what represents you. And I know we always overly lean on what it is that, how important the baseball actually is to the product, but it ain't nothing. And if you're trying to draw guys in, that's another thing.
I guess that's kind of where we're at for this week. Went a little bit longer than I was expecting it to, but I think we had a pretty good week.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. Discussion. Well, they hit us with the drama bomb today, that's for sure.
I know. It was very kind of them. They knew we were recording on Thursday. Very nice of them.
Much appreciated.
Leaving the scares for the day before Halloween.
Spooky season is upon us. Private equity is in the building.
You want to plug anything or promote anything for release?
Yeah, keep an eye on my channels, Indie Ball Nation, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Stuff's coming out, I promise. Life's just weird.
Pretty much same boat. Indie Ball Pod, Twitter, Indie Ball Report, everywhere else. And I will say, keep an eye on some of these other Indie Ball podcasts. We may make an appearance over there sooner than later. Hopefully we'll have another fun week next week. We'll be firmly into the off season. We'll hopefully get some interviews going. Not next week, but the week after. But who knows? Maybe next week too. Who's to say, really? Until then, don't forget to play ball.